And you guys know, normally I would never comment on this. I would never comment on body language, facial expression. The one exception I make is Duper's Delight, and only when it's extremely overt. And here we have Dr. Phil saying he believes they didn't kill their daughter. Summer's been missing for 4 months. Dr. Phil says he believes they didn't kill her, didn't bury her. He believes their timeline, everything. And Don is laughing. I can't help but commentate on it. The things in this case are things we don't see in almost any of my other series. This is highly unusual, and it's causing me to comment on things I haven't commented on since Casey Anthony and O.J. Simpson. What are the 4 signs of a hoax? I'm Deception Detective. I'm an attorney trained in statement analysis, and this channel exists to expose lies and manipulation. Before we proceed, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. In today's video, we're going to analyze Dr. Phil's interview with Don and Candace Wells. This is the 6th video in my Summer Wells series. And in this video, we're going to analyze their interview along the 4 criteria I have of spotting a hoax. And you can find this in my hoax playlist as well as in my deception deck, which you can order at deceptiondeck.com. And we're basically going to go through the 4 criteria as we see them pop up in this interview. Without further ado, let's listen.
Wish we were talking about a thing.
Just want our baby home.
Well, first, let me say I'm glad to meet you both, but very sorry for the occasion. I wish we were talking about 1,000 other things than your missing daughter, Summer. Since you've last talked to Scott and Greg, have you learned anything at all? Anything new happened? Anything from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation? Anything that we don't know?
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all?
Nothing at all.
All right, so one of the things we do on my videos and in Deception Detection is we look at the expected versus the unexpected. So Don and Candace Wells are ostensibly parents of a missing little girl. They have the opportunity to go onto the Dr. Phil show to bring more attention to their daughter. So you would expect them, right, the average typical parent of a missing child, we would expect them to be talking about everything they know, putting out any leads they're aware of, talking about anything that happened that day, maybe appealing to any kidnappers or talking directly to Summer through the TV, or even just describing her or explaining little details that if someone, one of the millions of people that's watching this, might trigger something in their head and they might come forward with a lead. So one thing we do not expect is reticence, where someone is unwilling to talk about the topic that they've been brought onto the TV show. And that is one of our signs of a hoax. So number 2 here is reticence. So on the deception deck, I've got all 4 there. Number 2 is reticence. And reticence is basically, if you're listening to someone's story, you ask yourself, are they reluctant to present their evidence? Are they reluctant to talk about the thing that they're there to talk about? And we saw this with Bob Lazar when he was on Joe Rogan's podcast to talk about UFOs. It was like pulling teeth for Joe to get him to actually talk about any UFOs. That's a sign of a hoax, right? If you actually worked with UFOs, I'd expect you to talk about it in great detail right away. And just to bring it to a more obvious, basic example, consider if you saw a really hideous dog, right? Like a dog that was so ugly, its tongue was sticking out, its eyes were bulging while you were walking in the park. When you get home to tell your friends about it, right, or your family about it, would you be reticent? It's like, well, I saw a dog. What did it look like? Well, I can't really describe it. It was just a really weird dog, but I can't go into any detail, right? Would you tease it like them? You're reticent? Or would you say, look, I saw this dog, the tongue was hanging out, had a weird snout. It was looking at me, making a really funny growling noise, right? You'd be very detailed and very forward and candid with your info. So why do I say all that? Listen to Dr. Phil's question and then listen to Don's response.
1,000 other things than your missing daughter, Summer. Since you've last talked to Scott and Greg, have you learned anything at all? Anything new happened? Anything from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation? Anything that we don't know?
All right, so have you learned anything about the investigation? I would expect the parent of a missing child to say there was a red car, or police found her shoelace, or police have questioned this person or that person, right? Any little detail that they could put out there to help them find their daughter. But listen to how Don responds.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
That's it. Nothing at all. That is not what I would expect from the parent of a missing child to do. It is what I would expect of a hoaxer. Now, does the fact that Don says nothing at all mean he's a hoaxer? It mean he's lying? No, of course not. Right? We need multiple signs of deception before we conclude that someone's being deceptive. And even then, my analysis here is just my opinion.
First off, tell me about Summer. Candace, you're her mom. Tell me about Summer. What's she like? How did she spend her time mostly?
Playing with the toys.
Yeah. Did she like to play inside, outside?
She likes to be outside most of the time.
Yeah. You have the 3 boys.
So once again, it's up to Dr. Phil to prompt them for any small piece of detail about Summer, about the case. This reminds me a lot of the other hoaxers we looked at on the channel, and I have an entire playlist about hoaxers. Right, with Bob Lazar, it was like pulling teeth to get him to talk about UFOs. Like Bob Gimlin, it was like pulling teeth to get him to talk about allegedly seeing Bigfoot. Right, he was happy to go into great detail about how he was camping with his friend and how they were looking for Bigfoot, but when they encountered Bigfoot, he became very reticent. Right, all he did, he used 6 words to describe Bigfoot and then moved on, and all he said was, "There one was." Right, so extreme reticence is one sign of a hoax. Are they reluctant to present their evidence?
Boys. And then Summer, she was the youngest.
Yeah.
And how'd she get along with the boys?
She was boss of the boys.
She ran the ran the boys. Yeah.
Also, notice how she says Summer was the boss of the boys, right? So that everyone knows, right? It's almost a meme of deception detection and statement analysis that if someone talks about their kid in the past tense, it means they know their kid's dead. And this became famous because of the Susan Smith case in the 90s, where she talked about her sons in the past tense, even though she was saying they'd been kidnapped. She said a guy came, carjacked her while her kids were in the back seat, and drove off. But when she talked to the press about her kids, she said, they wanted me, they needed me. So she was talking about them in the past tense, which was a sign that she knew they were dead. And lo and behold, she had murdered them. She locked them in the car and then let the car roll into a body of water and drowned them. So I always flag it when a parent talks about their kid in the past tense that they may know that the kid is dead. Does this mean 100% of the time that they know they're dead? No. However, it is unusual of the parents of a missing child to speak about them in the past tense, because parents of missing children always, not always, but 99% of the time tend to hold out that hope that their kid is still out there alive and is going to be found. Otherwise, what's the point of going on to Dr. Phil? If you don't believe your kid's still out there to be found, there's no point in raising awareness about it. So the fact that she speaks about Summer in the past tense, right, she was the boss of the boys, is something to note. But like everything, it's not a smoking gun.
She was the youngest.
Yeah.
And how'd she get along with the boys?
She was boss of the boys.
She ran the ran the boys. Yeah. I kind of, in watching her run around, she sure had a lot of energy. Was she one that would wander off, chase a butterfly, do something where she would look up and realize she was further away than she thought she might be?
No.
She stuck close to.
So once again, more one-word answers, more reticence, right? No. Nothing useful, right? Like she liked to play outside. We've heard in other interviews them talk about her playing outside, how she liked to run around. Why not bring that up? Why not mention that? We've also heard them talk about how there are bears and snakes on the property and potentially coyotes. Why not bring that up as well, right? Why not put every possible lead out there and make the most of your appearance on Dr. Phil? So the reticence here is not expected. These one-word answers are what you would expect from someone being questioned by the police, right? Someone trying not to give anything away. So even if they're ashamed or embarrassed, let's say that Summer walked off because they were negligent parents. At this point, I would still expect them to be open as possible if they really want to find their daughter, if they know she's out there. So this reticence is the first of our 4 signs of a hoax, and we're seeing a lot of it here at the front end of the interview.
She was
the
still
house.
close to the house.
Was she a daddy's girl or a mama's girl?
She was a daddy's girl.
Daddy's girl?
Yeah.
There were some vehicles that were seen around the property that day. A red truck, for example, was seen nearby. Did that person ever come forward and identify themselves?
Right, so it's up to Dr. Phil to bring up the trucks. Also, normally I don't watch these interviews in advance. I've watched this one once through, up until where we're going to pause it today, just to make sure that all 4 signs of a hoax are in this. So we're going to hit all 4 signs of a hoax. But once again, more reticence. It's up to Dr. Phil to bring up the cars. Why did the parents not bring that up? Right, if that's new information they've learned, why not bring it up when Dr. Phil mentioned it? You know, by the way, yes, the police did find that there was a truck in the area. It was red. It looked like, a Ford. If anyone knows that truck or if the owner's out there, please come forward.
Themselves?
Never did come forward as far as we know.
Also, they could say, please come forward to eliminate yourself as a suspect. Also, we just want to know if you saw anything that day. Right, so asking the driver to come forward doesn't necessarily have to be a threatening proposition. It could literally be an appeal. Please, you were in the area around the time our daughter went missing. Please come forward to let us know if you saw anything. But they appear to have zero curiosity about what that person saw. Right, so and what does that reflect? It reflects they probably know exactly what happened to Summer. That's why they're not grasping at straws. They're not appealing to this driver to come forward and say anything he might know, even if he didn't do it. You know, maybe he saw someone else, or maybe he heard something, right? There's zero curiosity about that. And we tend to see this a lot in other cases where I think the parents of a missing child are hoaxing. For example, the Madeleine McCann case. If you're following my series on that, they rarely, if ever, express any curiosity about what happened to her. Right, so even when they're asking for leads in one interview we analyzed, right, they say, if you have any information, no matter how trivial, please let us know. Right, the implication is that any information is trivial. All that matters is the degree of triviality. Right, suggests they know what happened. Or the fact that they never questioned their friends who were with them or hotel staff where their kid went missing from. And in the case of Summer Wells, the parents never accused each other. Why not? Right? If Don was at work when Summer went missing, why does he have zero curiosity about whether his wife did something or his grandmother did something or his sons did something? Even if it was accidental and they covered it up. Right? Zero curiosity about that.
Do y'all know anybody with a red
No.
truck?
I don't.
You know, statistics tell us that when children are abducted or molested or in any way victimized, it's very seldom by strangers. It's a friend of the family, a family member. It's somebody that has access to the family.
And here Dr. Phil is correct, which is why whenever I do a missing child case, I start with the parents because statistically they are the most likely suspect. Right? So if we're following Occam's razor, the most likely scenario is probably the right one. It's the parents, which is why when I do Madeline McCann, John Benet Ramsey, Summer Wells. I start with the parents. And briefly, as a side note, if you are a subscriber to my channel, you can vote on the topics I cover, right? So I look at the requests in the comments, and then I take the most requested topics and I put them into periodic community polls. So right now, for example, I have a community poll on my YouTube channel. You can find it if you're a subscriber under the community tab on my channel with Nicole Kessinger, William Tyrell, West Memphis 3, and Ben Needham. And once again, William Tyrell is a missing boy in Australia. Ben Needham is a boy who went missing in Greece. So when I analyze these missing children, I'm going to start with the parents. And if I don't see any signs of deception or withholding information in their story, then I'll move on to a wider investigation, right? Analyzing other people's statements. Also, the third largest population of my subscribers are Australians, and thank you to everyone in Australia who subscribes to my channel. I've had so many appeals to look at William Tyrell, just personal comments from people under this poll and all my other videos. The Australians have shown so much passion for this little boy that even though he's trailing in my community poll, I've been moved to do a video about him. So I will do a video about him, and I hope my Australian subscribers and Australians in general turn out for that video. Remember, I base the videos I do on who watches them and if my general audience watches it. So hopefully, if that gets enough views, I can make a series out of it. But from what I know, this is a sad story, and it lines up with lots of other missing children that we cover on the channel, including Summer Wells.
Do you have any idea, any concept of anybody that would have had knowledge of your property, how to get down that road, how to do anything that and I'm not asking you to name somebody here, but is there anybody that comes to mind?
Once again, Dr. Phil is asking them a very broad question. Is there anyone, anywhere, at any time who knows anything about your property? What would the parent of a missing child say? What do you expect someone to say? What if your kid was missing or even your dog was missing? What would you say? Well, for example, if it were me, I would say I've got a mailman that comes to my property. There's a UPS guy who comes to my property and delivers packages. There were people working across the street on an electrical pole, right? Which I think is actually the case. There was actually government workers working around the property. Right, then I would say I've got friends who visit, family who visit. I would be bringing up every possible lead. But what do you, if they are hoaxing, what do you expect they say, right? So start thinking like me now. I'll give you all four signs of a hoax right now, right? Just so we're not hiding the ball. So conclusiveness, reticence, emotionality, where there's a difference between the emotions you see and the emotions they're reporting in their story, right? So if they're crying and they don't report that they were crying at the time, or they don't report any emotions of sadness, it's a sign that they're probably manipulating you. And then vagueness, right? So those are the four. If you've pre-ordered your deception deck, thank you very much. They're going to ship out very soon now. They're at the printer. If you haven't, you can order at deceptiondeck.com. While they're on pre-sale, while they're on pre-order, there is a sale, so you can actually get it for cheaper than when they're actually printed and in hand. Okay, so these are the four. Reticence is the one we're looking at right now. If they are hoaxing, what do you expect them to say? Do you expect them to come forward and talk about everyone who's been to their property? Or do you expect them to give us another one-word answer?
That might have seen Summer or targeted her in some way?
Not that we know of. We've been thinking about that constantly, constantly. It's just trying to think.
Candace, is there?
No. Another one-word answer. Not that we know of. So no postman, no one you saw, no friends, no nothing. I don't believe it. Right? And you don't need to be a deception detective to realize that that's probably That's an odd response. Not one person comes to mind who is familiar with your property at all.
Is there anybody that made you uncomfortable, just the way they looked at her or were around her?
Nobody that I'm aware of.
I'm sorry?
Nobody that I'm aware of.
Nobody that I'm aware of. These are big red flag answers because they are so reticent. Reticence. And if you've seen a video I did, What Does an Innocent Parent Sound Like? It's in my McCann's playlist. You'll see the difference between the way these parents are talking and parents of actual missing children. Once you watch that video, the difference is so stark it's almost impossible to unsee it. And maybe I'll do another comparison video for this series as well, where I look at two other parents of actual missing children and compare them to the Wells, just so there's one of those comparison videos in this playlist. So please do let me know in the comments if you want me to do another comparison video with innocent parents. And if you have any innocent parents you think would be a good comparison, drop their names in the comments below as well, please.
I've been involved in a lot of these investigations, and I've got some observations I want to share with you that I feel real strongly about. To make matters worse for Don and Candace, Child Protective Services removed their 3 sons from the house. That might be a bad thing. It might not be a bad thing given some of the hate that's been directed towards them. We'll talk about that when we come back.
Authorities say on October 14th, Summer Wells' mom, Candace Bly, told officers Donald Wells came home drunk and saw someone else in the house and believed that Bly was cheating on him. Bly filed an order of protection. She says Wells drinks and
So just here briefly, we already have written proof there was another guy in the house. Why did they not mention this guy as a potential person? So even if they're not bright enough to say, hey, I've got a postman who drops off packages, there are people doing work, there at least was another guy at one point in their house. And I do believe that there were a bunch of people coming in and out of their house a lot, very shady, low-class people. And if you've seen my playlist on the Wells, you'll see me get into a lot of that in these other videos. However, even if we hadn't done any of these other videos, any of this other analysis of them, we know already here that there was at least one other guy who had been inside their house when Summer was there. Why was he not brought up? Once again, this just indicates zero curiosity about what actually happened from the parents, which should suggest that they know what actually happened.
throws things. And
also, now that I was listening to this earlier, but now that I'm actually looking at the screen, we can see the writing, so we know that they can at least write, but very poorly. All right, so for example, Candace spells fears incorrectly. My mother fears, F-E-I-R-S. If you've seen my last Summer Wells video, How to Analyze a Hostile Witness, I appealed directly to Don Wells and I said, I will send you questions, and if you answer those questions in a way that makes me believe that you're innocent, I will stop making videos about you. That was 2 weeks ago. I've heard from multiple people that Don is very frequently on YouTube and social media. I've heard nothing from him. All he'd have to do is leave a comment or submit a contact form on my website, deceptiondeck.com. I've heard nothing from him. Some people said that I might not hear from him because they are illiterate, but here clearly they can read and write, even if not very well. So I gave him 2 weeks. He hasn't done it, so that's why we're making this video right now.
and that he was mentally and physically abusive.
She's apologized to me. She even talked to the judge and told him that she made a serious mistake.
The domestic assault charges and unlawful possession of a handgun were dismissed.
For Don and Candace, it was bad enough dealing with the stress of their 5-year-old daughter Summer disappearing 4 months ago from their rural Tennessee property. But to make matters worse, their sons, 13, 11, and 9 years old, were removed by Child Protective Services.
This is the hardest time of me and Candace's life. You lose your daughter, and then you get blamed for it, and then everybody turns on you. We had threatening phone calls daily. They threatened my job. They done everything they could to destroy our family.
All right, so this interview was done only 4 months after Summer went missing. So already we see a total lack of curiosity about what happened to her. And we're starting to see all 4 signs of a hoax, right, from my spotting hoaxes card in the deception deck. So conclusiveness, reticence, emotionality, vagueness. We've already seen some examples of some of those, and now we're going to see examples of the rest. And when I mean a hoax can just be someone presenting false evidence or lying to you with false testimony. Right, so a hoax isn't necessarily like the big banner hoaxes we looked at on the channel, like aliens, specifically Bob Lazar's story about aliens and UFOs, or Bigfoot, or Me Too hoaxers, right? So people who weren't actually victims pretending to be victims. There's also hoaxes you experience in everyday life, and like we have here, what I believe to be a true crime hoax, where the parents are hoaxing an abduction in order to cover up a crime, whether it was a crime of passion, of negligence, of premeditation, we don't know. At least at this point, we don't.
Family. Had a stranger come up at 2 in the morning, didn't know what he was doing there. I fired a shot over his head, and they ran down the driveway. I expected bullet holes to be coming through our house, so we had a lot of sleepless nights.
So once again, now we have a mention of another shady person. So even after Summer was missing, someone came to their property allegedly, and Don had to shoot at them. Why was that not mentioned when Dr. Phil asked for new information, new leads? So just notice all the potential things they could have mentioned outside of the obvious. Why do they not do that? Why are they not scrambling for leads the way we expect them to? Like I've said many times now, I believe it's because they know what actually happened, so they are not curious about what happened. Instead, they're trying to shut down the conversation and wrap up this little investigation. And we've seen this from the McCanns as well. Right? They express zero curiosity about what happened that night or where Madeline might potentially be.
It was taking a toll on me. At one point, I broke down. I lost it. I started drinking really bad, and I made some poor decisions. Once Summer was taken, CPS had to open a case for our good and for the boys' protection. So CPS thought our house was dangerous. I was being dangerous. The CPS took our boys, which I was glad at the time. I was glad that they were not here because I was scared to death for their lives.
So 99% of the time, if someone's trying to deceive you or trick you, they'll just tell the truth and they'll leave out vital context or detail. So they'll lie by omission. More advanced liars, like psychopaths, lie by commission, where they actually just make up something whole cloth. But that requires a certain type of boldness. And then the most sophisticated liars lie by information treatment, where they tell you the exact truth, but they distort it with the words they use. So, for example, if you see my Casey Anthony video, that's an example of someone who lies by commission. 99% of the time on my channel, we see people lie by omission. And then if you see my video, how to spot a sophisticated manipulator, you'll see how Alan Dershowitz lies with information treatment, if he is in fact lying. And Bill Clinton is also a sophisticated liar who lies with information treatment. And a great example is when he said, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Monica Lewinsky." That denial was 100% true. He could have passed a polygraph giving that denial. However, it was information treatment because it hinged on his definition of sexual relations. So in his mind, if he did not consider what he did with Monica Lewinsky technically sexual relations, then he told us the truth. He and she did not have sexual relations. But the reality in the real world, the average person would understand that as him saying that they did not have sex. right, or any form of sex, which was not true. So here when Don Wells says, for example, I was in fear for the boys' lives, I believe him. And I think it might be because he knows someone on that property either killed Summer or caused her to be killed. And that person might even be himself, right? The context is omitted. And the beauty of the oath that witnesses take is that it covers all three of those types of lies, right? I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God, right? I swear to tell truth, which covers lies of commission. I swear to tell the whole truth, which covers lies of omission, and nothing but the truth, which covers information treatment.
I agreed with them. My wife didn't, and she's mad at me, but it was just too dangerous. And now it's 3 months later, and there's no sign of our daughter, and we miss all our kids. We just miss them so much.
You want the boys back,
Yes, sir.
and you didn't want them to go to begin with.
Right.
You want them back now.
Yes.
Do you think it's safe for them to come back?
It's a lot safer than it was.
That is a strange response, and I believe him. Right, so notice how in 99% of the times in my videos, I believe exactly what the person's saying. Usually when I say that someone's lying by commission, it's when I see signs of scripting, where they've scripted their story, right, where they've prepared it in advance. So when he says it's safer than it was, I believe him. I believe the house they were in was extremely dangerous, that he may have been dangerous on some drugs or some pills, or they were in a desperate financial situation, but there was some danger that led to Summer's death. Now she's dead, and now it's less dangerous. Where in reality, if she had actually been abducted, that means there's a person still out there who's kidnapping little kids, but somehow he knows that it's safe now for the boys. That's safer. That doesn't add up. Right? So it's another indicator that they probably know exactly what happened. And I believe that they do know exactly what happened. Because if there was still a kidnapper out there, you would not expect him to say it's safe.
You haven't had any acts of violence against you at the house?
No.
Okay. So there's no reason in terms of acts of violence that have been perpetrated against you that would cause them to conclude that the boys would be in harm's way?
No, we just had one issue with a woman sent to our house, and we don't know. We've heard she was sent from some YouTubers. We don't know. Well, we called the police right away, and they took her off the property.
If they did a home study right now, if they came in and studied the home, would it meet the standard that they were looking for? Would the house be clean and uncluttered, and groceries and safe as far as guns and everything that Child Protective Services investigates? Would it be proper for the boys?
Well, there's some things they want us to work on. We need to put in a couple walls and some other things. So there's still a few things we need to work on.
But you could get that done in short order.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me tell you what I think. And I, like I say, I've done this a lot. And
All right, so here Dr. Phil is going to do what I consider to be fairly good interview technique. As long as you understand that he's probably saying all this just to get them to open up more. So sometimes people say things to people they don't like in order to seem friendly so they can get information. That's how the real world works. So I think sometimes when people hold stuff like this, as you'll see, against Dr. Phil, it's wrong. I personally don't think Dr. Phil is a particularly good interviewer, but this technique is fine. And I also agree when I see it in the real world. If you're pretending to be nice to someone to get information from them because you think they're guilty, I think that's proper. Police do it all the time.
And I trained as a forensic psychologist, looking psychology and the law and the forensics involved with human behavior and conduct. And based on the timeline and the factors here, it's very clear to me, based on the facts, that neither one of you did anything to hurt your daughter.
No, sir.
No, sir.
That's very clear to me.
Awesome.
So can we,
So Dr. Phil, I don't know whether or not he actually believes this, but it is proper interview technique, what he's doing right here.
are you understand that I understand that?
Yes.
And you understand that initially, the first thing they do is look at if it's the husband that goes missing or gets killed, they look at the spouse. If it's the wife that goes missing, they look at the husband.
Yeah.
Because statistically, oftentimes that's who it is. Again, because of access,
Right.
opportunity.
You can also hear and see how they are opening up more now, right? So now they're nodding along. They're saying, yeah, awesome. Whereas before they were clammed up. So some people might hold this against Dr. Phil. I don't know what he actually believes. But whatever he's doing here is good because it's going to get them to open up more. That's my point.
Motive, means, all of that.
So it is small-minded when I see people analyzing, phone calls with these people, or even in politics in general, when someone acts nice to a hated world leader in order to get something accomplished, it's small-minded to hold that against them. Because the point is what's accomplished, not whether or not someone looks mean or nice in the process. I'm not going to extrapolate on that further because it's distracting. But here, I don't know what Dr. Phil actually believes, but clearly it's getting them to open up more. So if you do have a YouTube channel of your own, and let's say you're hunting video game cheaters, or you have a true crime channel and you're able to get someone like Don Wells on the phone, I personally would never hold it against you for you to put them at ease by saying you believe they are innocent if it gets you the information you need. And if you're a longtime subscriber of mine, you know that I would love to interview people, but everyone I've offered is too scared to come on typically. But just be aware down the road, if I do that, just know what I'm doing, okay?
That they look at the spouse. And so when something happens to a child, parents are the ones in control of the child, so that's the first place they look.
Yes, sir.
And when I first studied this case, the first thing I looked at was, okay, what would be the opportunity for the father and the mother? And I looked at that not knowing y'all at all, just to look at it. And given the timeline, there's no way that either one of y'all did harm to your daughter, and I hate to even say these words, killed your daughter and hid her body in the woods somewhere. I just don't believe that's even possible. So understand, I'm not sitting here.
So that might actually be a little bit of leakage from Dr. Phil, that he really does believe they killed her and hid her in the woods, because they didn't say anything about her body being in the woods. They've stuck to this abduction story since day one, similar to the McCanns. So we might have a little bit of leakage from Dr. Phil, and this is also part of the reason I don't think Dr. Phil actually believes what he's saying here. As a forensic psychologist, he probably knows he needs to set them at ease in order to get them talking. And it's actually pretty brave of him to do this, because I feel like lots of the audience who can see clearly, who think the Wells are guilty, might hold this against him, but he's doing it despite that backlash in order to actually get some good statements for us. So while no interviewer is perfect, and as you've seen when I analyzed Burke Ramsey's interview with Dr. Phil does make lots of mistakes. He is by no means a perfect interviewer. This is good, right? So that's a point I want to make here.
Here wondering if you killed your daughter.
Awesome.
I'm not sitting here wondering if you killed your daughter.
Thank you.
I don't think that for a second. And I'm saying that publicly here. So if people are wondering what I think, that's what I think.
So I can already predict here, if you're watching this video, you might think that Don Wells is experiencing Duper's delight here when he giggled. So Duper's delight, if you're not aware, is the phenomenon where if someone's getting away with a lie and they're tricking someone, they actually get a rush of endorphins and they can get a little bit more giddy, a little bit more boisterous. Sometimes they might even smile or giggle. And it's known as Duper's delight. And 9 times out of 10, whenever I see someone comment that someone's experiencing duper's delight, I don't see it myself, right? I don't analyze body language. It has to be very overt in order for me to even comment on it. And one of the only times I've commented on it is O.J. Simpson in a short on my channel, like something like, what does duper's delight look like? So I anticipate I'm going to see people commenting that Don is experiencing duper's delight here. And for the first time in a long time, I might actually, I tend to agree with you. So right at the point where Dr. Phil is telling them he believes they're innocent, he believes everything they say, their story adds up, Don not only starts nodding his head more and being more vocal, saying, right, yes, awesome, but he actually lets out a little giggle and a smile here. Right, so it's not something I typically even comment on the channel, but this is pretty overt here, and the timing seems appropriate, where Dr. Phil is finally telling them that he believes them 100%. If someone were to express duper's delight, this would be the point where they do it.
Your daughter.
Awesome.
I'm not sitting here wondering if you killed your daughter.
Thank you.
I don't think that for
Let me
even
rewind
possible. Daughter.
So just watch his face here.
I hate to even say the.
So watch Don Wells' face, and if you're listening on podcast mode, listen for that little giggle he does. Right? As far as we know, these are parents whose kid is still missing and has been missing for 4 months. I wouldn't expect them to be giggling about anything.
Say these words, killed your daughter and hid her body in the woods somewhere. I just don't believe that's even possible. So understand, I'm not sitting here wondering if you killed your daughter.
Awesome.
I'm not sitting here wondering if you killed your daughter.
Thank you.
I don't think that for a second. And I'm saying that publicly here. So if people are wondering what I think, that's what I think. I don't think you did that. I don't think you did that. And I assume I'm correct about that.
Yes.
You didn't do anything to hurt your daughter?
No, sir.
You didn't do anything to hurt your daughter? Did he do anything to hurt your daughter?
No, sir.
Did she do anything to
No,
hurt
sir.
your daughter?
Look at, and you guys know, normally I would never comment on this. I would never comment on body language, facial expression. The one exception I make is duper's delight, and only when it's extremely overt. And here we have Dr. Phil saying he believes they didn't kill their daughter. Summers been missing for 4 months. Dr. Phil says he believes they didn't kill her, didn't bury her. He believes their timeline, everything. And Don is laughing. I can't help but commentate on it. The things in this case are things we don't see in almost any of my other series. This is highly unusual, and it's causing me to comment on things I haven't commented on since Casey Anthony and O.J. Simpson.
Okay. And, the reason that I can conclude that is based on the timeline is you couldn't have done that and hidden the body somewhere that couldn't have been found by now. Cadaver dogs, hunting dogs, search parties, all of that. You couldn't have gotten far enough away before authorities and search parties and everybody got in there. The question that I'm then left with is, do you know something about it that you haven't shared? Know something about it that you haven't shared?
So once again, I commend Dr. Phil for his technique here. And like I said as well, I wouldn't hold it against anyone. And if I do it in the future with someone who probably doesn't know enough about my channel and agrees to do an interview with someone I suspect, don't hold it against me if I do it. This is proper technique. He's clearly put them at ease. But he's using that now to ask a less threatening question that is going to reveal some answers for us.
Something you may not even know you know. You may not, there may be something in your mind you don't even know you know, or you may know something that you haven't chosen to speculate about, or you haven't chosen to tell. And that's what I'm really focused on right now, because you're in the best position to know what could have happened. If you had to speculate, what do you think happened?
I have no idea what happened.
Well,
All right. So once again, we see reticence. In particular, I have no idea. This, in statement analysis, is a red flag. So even if someone says something as absurd as, do you know why I thought I saw a leprechaun in your driveway? You still, even if you didn't care right about this story, you thought it was weird. Honestly, most people would not say, I have no idea. Right? They would say something like, well, I've got a garden gnome on my front porch, or there's a light, or my sprinkler sometimes turn on. Maybe the sprinkler popped up out of the grass and you thought that was a leprechaun. But when it comes to your missing child, I really do not expect someone to say they have no idea. They've had 4 months now to rack their brains about what happened to their daughter. I would expect them to have countless ideas, from their most likely to their least likely to everything in between. So when someone says no idea, it is extremely reticent. It indicates that they probably know exactly what happened, and they're too scared to even offer any clues or any speculation, right? They want to be as close to the vest as possible. And other people who have said no idea are Casey Anthony, and I'll have to put in the comments at some point. But there's plenty of examples of people who said no idea when they were in fact guilty. It's a form of extreme reticence, right? So extreme reticence. They're not trying to help at all. They're not speculating, not presenting any evidence, any leads, any clues, nothing.
I don't.
You have to have some idea because you took your daughter in the house and you never saw her come out.
Right.
Right, so no idea. How about a bear or a coyote? Things she's already mentioned were on the property. Or maybe it was that guy in the red car. Or the guy who was in my house when my husband came home and thought I was cheating on him. There's plenty of options to choose from. More than enough. But she says no idea. That is extreme reticence. A giant red flag that this is probably a hoax. They're scared to give any information at all.
Right.
And why are they scared to give any information at all? Because they know guys like me are listening to their every word.
Something happened.
I don't know.
And not just me, all of you too. You guys catch stuff that I miss all the time.
What happened? She just was gone.
But she didn't just vaporize. Someone had to take her out of that house. And we know it wasn't you. We know you didn't do anything to her.
Right.
So if it wasn't you, then who was it? Let's rule you out. Okay,
I don't
we've
know
taken
who it
you
was.
off the chessboard. You're off the table. If it wasn't you, then who would be the next most likely candidate?
I don't know. I wish I knew.
Would it be someone, a stranger? Would it be somebody you know?
I don't know anybody that would have did it. Then it had to be a stranger.
Is there
So these are weird answers. I don't know anybody who would have done it. It had to be a stranger. What she's doing, she's speaking in the negative. Everything is telling us what didn't happen. Until she comes to the story she's pushing, which is the stranger abduction, which we've seen the McCanns do as well. Right, so ever since day one, the Wells have always said that a stranger kidnapped their daughter. So we've seen reticence already. And as far as the Wells, just like the McCanns, writing off the possibility of anything but a stranger abduction is a sign of conclusiveness. And here on the deception deck card, I've written, I'll just read you what I have on the back of the card, right? So on the front of each card, we have the concept. This is the concept section, suit of the deck. Spotting hoaxes is the concept. On the front, we have the prompt, spotting hoaxes. On the back, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The famous quote from Carl Sagan. And then we have the rule, right? The part you should memorize. When evaluating a story that seems implausible, Considering, let's see, when evaluating a story that seems implausible, considering the possibility of a hoax is crucial. Liars, knowing their story may not be believed, might overreact or fabricate evidence to seem more convincing. All right, sorry, let me read that again. When evaluating a story that seems implausible, considering the possibility of a hoax is crucial. Liars, knowing their story may not be believed, might overact or fabricate evidence to seem more convincing. To determine if a story is a hoax, consider 1. Conclusiveness. Does a speaker express certainty about what happened despite limited evidence? And here we have the Wells expressing certainty that a stranger must have kidnapped Summer, when there is no evidence, A, that she was even kidnapped, and no evidence that could rule out anyone else from kidnapping her. There's nothing to rule out a bear or a coyote snatching her, or a dingo, one of my favorite examples. Right? In Australia, there's a famous case the baby was snatched by a dingo. Everyone wrote it off. It happened to be true. Right? So we can't write off unlikely things. But these parents have written off bear, coyote. They've written off anyone that they know, any friend, any neighbor, the grandmother who lives on the property, each other. They've written off everything except for a stranger. That is highly conclusive despite the limited evidence. And then when it comes to coming up with theories or anything else or speculation about any other options, they're extremely reticent to tell us anything else that might lead to a different clue, and reticent to even talk about the day in question.
Is there anybody you knew that has disappeared since this happened?
No.
There were.
All right. Also, the other point is Candace is now crying. And this is the third thing on our card. Right? That's how beautiful the cards are. That I can actually, I wrote these weeks ago, right? They're at the printers. But we can apply these lessons to new videos because hoaxers are so predictable. They follow a pattern. So now we have emotionality. Is there a mismatch between their displayed emotions, like crying, and the emotions reported in their account? So here we have Candace crying on TV, but she hasn't reported once to us how sad she is or how depressed she is or how it hurts her to even think about Summer. Or on the day it happened, I was wailing and screaming and crying for her. I was running up and down. Nothing along those lines. All we're getting is the displayed emotions, but there's no reported emotions. And that mismatch is usually the sign of a hoax, right? Where someone's overacting to sell their story. But it's a lot harder to fabricate a story. So when they tell us about the day in question or about their feelings, they forget to include those emotions in their story, in their narrative. Right? It's a lot easier to just cry on command and act. And this is one pitfall that body language analysis has, that they get too swayed by the displayed emotions rather than listening for the reported emotions. And on the topic of body language, at some point in this Dr. Phil interview, I've not watched this far into it yet. I think I stopped watching it right after this, so we'll wrap up this video soon. But at some point in this series, in the previews, it shows two of the behavior panel guys actually interviewing Candace and Dawn. And I think that's going to be very interesting to see. And I'm not going to pre-watch that one so we can react to it together and you'll see my first reactions. Because as you know, there's plenty of cases where I disagree with the behavior panel, including this one and the McCanns. And I want to see what pitfalls do they fall into that I believe that I avoid with my techniques. All right, let's keep watching.
They were around, and then this happened, and all of a sudden they kind of moved away, or they've gone away somewhere.
Oh, nobody that I know
The only people that I know is the people I work with on a daily basis, and that's the only ones I've ever hung out with. I work all the time, and when I am home, I'm with my kids and her. And
Is there anybody?
And if you've seen my series, you know that they go to the church a lot, right? They're very close with people at their church. Why is that not mentioned? Why are they so reticent? They're not being candid with their information. Like I said early on, it's like pulling teeth. Same thing with Bob Lazar, same thing with Bob Gimlin, same thing with every other hoaxer we've analyzed on the channel. And if you want to see a contrast, as well as Amber Heard and Me Too accusers, right? Fake Me Too victims. If you want to see the difference between a hoaxer victim and a real victim, look at my video about Christy Mack, who was actually a victim, and then compare her to someone like Ashley Morgan Smithline or Amber Heard. In the case of missing parents, compared Dawn and Candace Wells to the parents in my video about what do innocent parents look like the biological mother of Gannon Stouch.
That you've had dealings with that are shady, that would do something revenge-wise, just to get back at you, to hurt you, that you owe money or that you had illicit dealings with in some way. We know that you've had some.
It's interesting that Dr. Phil is bringing up all these options because these are things I've said in my analysis. Right, ever since video 1, when I first listened to these people, how they talk, what they talk about, I said it is possible, as absurd as it might sound, that they could have sold Summer, rented her out, done horrific things with her. Because I do believe that they are addicts, and addicts do some crazy things.
Some conflict with the law concerning drugs and different things. Is there anybody that you've gotten sideways with?
I fired a lot of guys for being on meth. And the last guy I fired a day before, pretty sure, I can't prove it, but he was way out there and I fired him. And the very next day, my daughter disappeared.
So why is this brought up now? Why was this not brought up earlier? Why did Dr. Phil have to pry this out of him? Why? Probably because it's not true. Hoaxers love to linger on the true stuff. Like Bob Gimlin when he's describing finding Bigfoot, right? He loves to linger on walking through the woods and how they camped and how they wanted to find Bigfoot and who called them out there. Because all that's true. But then when it comes to the made up part of the story, the part they have to lie about, like seeing Bigfoot and filming Bigfoot, they get very brief and very reticent. Right? There one was. Or Bob Lazar on the Joe Rogan podcast. Right? He loved talking about how he was recruited to Area 51, the interview process, who he knew there and how he learned about it. But when it came time to describe the UFO, I walked into a hangar and there one was sitting, something along those lines, right? Extremely reticent. And it had to be prompted by Joe multiple times to get him there. And we're seeing the same sort of severe, extreme reticence here with these parents. Dr. Phil has to pry every little detail out of them. And usually what that means is when someone has to have the words pried out of their mouth, that the words are fake, that they're lies.
And the law, TBI's been talking to him, and he's got an alibi where he was.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe the guy has an alibi because I feel like that entire story is fake.
Is there anybody that he's been involved with that you think might be trying to get even with y'all by taking your daughter?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is there anybody that might be trying to get even with you, that would try to hurt you by taking your daughter?
I can't think of anybody.
Nobody in the drug culture, nobody owed money, nobody.
Well,
In our area, there's people that, you know, you got these boys and then you got these boys that you know, they're very prideful about, you know, kind of like, I guess LA, you got the Bloods and the Crips. Well, these are hillbillies. I don't know.
All right, so now he's throwing out some more red herrings. Also, notice the use of the word these. When someone uses this, that, this, these, it's a sign of closeness. It indicates closeness. All right, so these boys. Which probably means he does not actually think these people took his daughter. Right, he's being pried and prodded, so he's coming up with answers for Dr. Phil.
But we don't associate with them. We don't socialize with them. We try to socialize with our church. We try to
All right, so why was the church not mentioned earlier?
keep our kids in that church. That's our main goal. We try to stay completely far away from that kind of activity as possible.
Well, but you haven't always.
So also notice the use of the word try. When someone says they're trying to do something, that doesn't mean they're doing it. Like I've had many people comment in my comments like Yoda, right? There is no try, only do. So when someone says, I'm trying to stop drinking, or I'm trying to be sober, or I'm trying to only associate with good people, that does not mean anything. Right? I could try right now. I could try not to take a sip. I'm trying. Oh, I failed, right? I'm done trying. So him talking about trying means nothing. In fact, it suggests the exact opposite. The fact that he's using the word try to hedge this can indicate to us that the exact opposite is going on. Because if he wasn't associating with these people, he could just say that. I don't associate with drug addicts. I don't associate with low lives. But the fact that he can't say that, instead uses the word try, is a great indicator that he actually does associate with drug addicts and low lives. All right, so we have some deceptive answers here. Clearly, they're hiding something. If you want to see my full breakdown of what I believe happened to Summer, check out my Summer Wells playlist. It is in the pinned comment below. So my pinned comment has one link to the playlist, a second link to become a member of the channel if you want to become a member of the channel, and a third link to deceptiondeck.com, where you can order the Deception Deck, as well as this awesome hat and this awesome members mug. My channel is entirely audience funded. I don't have any sponsors, which allows me to talk about whatever I want to talk about without having to mince my words. So please do consider supporting the channel by either getting merch or the Deception Deck, which is my favorite 52 rules for spotting deception. I spent a lot of time on it. I've consolidated a lot of knowledge into it, and it's going to be shipping very soon, or by becoming a member of the channel. And if you are a member of the channel, over in the members section, I have put this video about William Tyrell. Like I said earlier, even though he's trailing in the community poll, I also want to do at least one video about this little guy. So please do feel free to watch it. I'll probably record this in a couple days. Let me know your feedback so I can feature your insights and your nice catches when I do record that video. It is up there in the members section. Until next time, stay true.